You're back with The Nation. This morning we have an extended interview with Labour leader David Shearer. Let's meet our political journalists first, Alex Tarrant from interest.co.nz and John Hartevelt, Fairfax political reporter. Welcome along to you both. And to David Shearer, Labour leader, thank you too for coming in this morning. I'd like to start off with what is the pressing news issue at the moment, the GCSB. You want an inquiry into that organisation. Can you have a public inquiry into an agency that's so private and so secretive? Yes, is the answer. I mean, obviously what you don't do is reveal an enormous number of secrets, but what you can do is get somebody trusted to go in and actually take a really good look at what's going on, the procedures, the accountability lines. They did this in Australia after the Iraq War with the failure of intelligence in and around the weapons of mass destruction, and made some big changes as a result, not because of the issues, the actual details, but actually because of the way that the accountabilities actually worked. We need this, actually, because if we don't have this, New Zealanders are not going to have confidence in our security agencies and our intelligence agencies. And right now, in the United States, the story is about New Zealand bungling intelligence. It is very embarrassing, and we've got to restore that reputation that we have.
You mentioned the United States. I'm interested on your view. There have been suggestions that this whole episode has been symptomatic of us just getting too close and too cuddly with the United States. Do you think that's the case? I think there's an element of that. One of the things I'm particularly worried about is that the Intelligence Coordination Group, which is the body which is supposedly meant to coordinate all of the intelligence agencies, including GCSB. It's headed by Roy Ferguson, ex-ambassador to the United States. I can't believe that he didn't know about everything that had been going on in and around the .com case, because it was so intricately linked to what the US wanted to do. So if that information has gone up there and he knows about it, it hasn't gone on to John Key, or John Key hasn't been asking the right questions, that's exactly the sort of thing that an independent inquiry would be able to answer. The climate of the friendliness with the United States comes straight from the top, doesn't it? If you were Prime Minister, would you be so friendly with the United States as John Key has been? Oh, look, the United States is a long-term ally, and obviously an important ally to us. But we're an independent country, and we stand up for ourselves. We do unto ourselves as we feel we should do. We have our own laws, and we should obey our own laws. And what we've done here is broken our laws, possibly in bending over backwards for the United States, and that's definitely wrong. So how would Labour's relationship with the United States be different to Nationals? Well, it would be on a case-by-case basis. I mean, we, for example, under Helen Clark, did not go into Iraq. John Key wanted us to go into Iraq. We stood up and said, no, that's not the right decision to make. We've stood firm on the nuclear ships issue. These are things that are important to our sovereignty. We stand up as an independent nation. It doesn't mean to say, though, that we don't have good relationships with the United States and wouldn't have ongoing good relationships with them. The other big issue at the moment, Mr Shearer, is the high New Zealand dollar. And Labour has rested much of its economic policy on amending the Reserve Bank Act. How would that work under Labour? Well, the way that the dollar has gone up vis-a-vis other currencies has meant that many of our exporters are not doing well. We export to live. And if we export and our exports are doing well, then New Zealand does well. Right now, the United States, the European Central Bank, Japan, South Korea have all effectively devalued their currencies, and ours are still very high. It makes it very difficult for our exporters to be able to compete in those sorts of markets. So they've all got very low interest rates, obviously. So would Labour want to see the OCR lower? Would Labour want to do what the United States and the ECB is doing and intervene in the foreign exchange markets? Yeah. Well, what we've said is that the Reserve Bank Act needs to be amended so that inflation is not just simply the one target, so that we actually broaden that outlook. So it gives the Reserve Bank the ability to be able to take a look at how exports are doing and how our exchange rate is doing. So you cut the OCR to try and get the exchange rate down. Fuels inflation, what's the right level of those two? Well, those two things. Who tells the Reserve Bank that? Well, it's not for politicians to run the exchange rate, but what you do need to have is a wider toolbox for the Reserve Bank to be able to make those sorts of
make those sorts of judgments. And if they're only concentrating and focusing just on inflation, which was an issue, well, it's still an issue, but it was certainly the big issue 15, 20, 25 years ago. But it's not so much the issue today. And when you look around the world today and you see how it is we're going to be able to compete, our exchange rate is killing us.
Yeah, but basically what Labor's effectively saying is you want them to cut interest rates so that the pressure comes off the funds coming into New Zealand to try and get the exchange rate low. Isn't that the point of what Labor's saying with their policy? Well,
it may involve the interest rate coming down, but what we are saying is that rather than politicians becoming involved in setting exchange rates, what we are saying is that the Reserve Bank should have more ability rather than the very narrow
this is exactly what's happening, though. Labor is saying we don't want the exchange rate at where it is on the market level. It's there because of market dynamics at the moment. Labor's saying we don't want it there for the market dynamics. That's politicising the Reserve Bank Act again.
Well, no, I don't think that's the case. I think many people are saying, including the IMF, have saying that our exchange rate is overvalued by, I think the IMF said 15%. David Parker has been in the United States recently talking to Joseph Stiglitz, the head of the IMF, a whole bunch of economists who are saying the era of focusing solely on inflation is now over, and we need to be looking at a wider range of economic measures, and therefore giving the Reserve Bank the ability to actually take a...
They've got that ability now. It seems to be Labor just thinks, oh, we'll just tell them to do it. I mean, why doesn't Labor ask them to do other things as well?
No, I don't agree. What we are saying to them under the Act now is that inflation is the primary target, and what we're saying is that needs to be broader.
So now you don't mind if inflation goes a bit higher, if it allows for more employment or growth in the economy?
What I'm saying is that inflation is one aspect, but it's not the sole aspect. It was the sole aspect 20 years ago, but today we've got other pressures on our economy, and that's about exchange rates and actually growing our economy.
So is this Labor's magic bullet to stimulate the economy?
There is no magic bullet, but this is one issue that we are exploring and putting out there, because it is where other countries are going to, and we are needing to take real notice of that. Now, if you look at many other countries, as I said, they are already doing that. This government is currently saying, no, we're just going to leave it up to the world market. We're going to be okay. Well, actually, that's not the case. But coming back to your point, what we need to be able to do is not only just to focus on exchange rates, obviously, but it also is about making sure that we are investing in productive enterprises, and that is around a capital gains tax that we've been talking about, universal savings, so that there's more capital to be able to invest it in businesses. There's a whole series, superannuation, which we're worried about, growing so that it's starting to soak up government expenditure.
That brings up a really important issue as to why the exchange rate is so high, is because foreign funds have been flowing in to fuel the housing market. Labor says that's because of a lack of a capital gains tax. That's got nothing to do with the Reserve Bank, does it?
No, but this is what we're coming back to Rachel's point about a silver bullet. There are no silver bullets. There is no silver bullet, but there are a series of measures that we can take to readjust our economy and refocus our economy towards productive enterprises rather than speculative ones.
The government can take with fiscal and tax settings, not monetary policy, really, it could be.
Absolutely. It's not one or the other. It's both. I mean, there's a whole bevy of things that we're able to do. And what we're saying, and what we are very different from where National is going, is National is saying, we can't do anything more. It's hands off. What we're saying is, no, it's not hands off. We can make some big changes, and this is a very big difference between us and National. Some big changes around monetary policy, taxation, savings, superannuation.
You're talking about a more regulated economy, aren't you? So why are you protecting unproductive jobs? You want a modern economy. So why protect jobs that don't work in the market?
So like mining.
Uneconomic mining
projects. Well, just a minute. We're not actually talking about it. Those four things that I was talking about is not regulating more. Capital gains tax is just simply readjusting the signal. So people, rather than investing in the property market in Auckland, actually start to invest into
specifically on solid
business.
energy. Labor has been talking this week about a bailout for solid energy to keep those miners working at Spring Creek.
What we said on Spring Creek, and it's very interesting. I mean, Spring Creek is owned by Solid Energy. Solid Energy is on the shelf to be sold. If you are going to sell a business, you certainly take a different approach to their approach that you might want to take if you were saying, this is going to be something we're going to be keeping for a longer term period. So if the owners of, which is the government, but the people who are selling solid energy off it, makes very good sense for them right now to be cutting workers and closing down a mine.
Okay, what our economy does need is capital, foreign investment. So where do you sit on overseas investment? Would you approve, for example, Hire taking over Fisher and Paykel?
Well, what we've said in our policy is that if there were transactions more than $100 million, at the moment it goes to the Overseas Investment Office, sure, and we would take that further and take it to a ministerial level as well. So it's just not simply at a bureaucrats that would look at that. But I have to say that it would be very, very rare occasions where we would intervene into that market.
But again, it would be politicised, wouldn't it? It would be politicised much more than it is now.
By giving ministers more discretion as well.
Well, you would give ministers discretion, but and we've talked about this, and it's stated very clearly in our policy. This would be in the case of, and we give the example of rare metals being found in New Zealand, that we would want to make sure that they stayed under New Zealand.
There's no certainty, though, is there? It could be that foreign investment decisions are just decided on the TV polls.
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, we have run an economy before, and I'll remind you that in the 9 years of the Labor government, we ran surpluses every single year.
OK, I just want to bring you back to that issue of Hire and Fisher and Paykel. Sure, that you'd give the ministers more discretion on this. That would be your policy. In principle, would you agree to it? I don't know the details exactly about Hire, because it's not within my purview. But I mean, certainly Fisher and Paykel is one of those industries that I see being the future of New Zealand in terms of it being research and development orientated, innovative type of a business. But I don't see us intervening and buying Fisher and Paykel. But it comes back to the other... Or blocking Hire from doing that.
Yeah, but it comes back to a broader point, which is if our economy is in a better state, where we have universal savings and we have the degree of capital markets that have some real depth, then we actually do get New Zealand buyers rather than having overseas buyers coming in and taking some of our best companies.
All right, we'll pause there just for a moment. We'll take a break and return to our interview with Labor leader David Shearer in just a moment. Do stay with us.